Shalom Kulchem. Shalom, all of you. I want to take a few minutes before class begins to talk about the way we will be learning Hebrew and why we are going about it this way. This course takes a living language approach to learning Biblical Hebrew. Among other things, this means the course will be conducted as far as possible in Biblical Hebrew. You are going to spend a lot of time in this class listening to Biblical Hebrew. You will be learning to speak Biblical Hebrew as well as to read and write Biblical Hebrew. This is different from how Biblical Hebrew has traditionally been taught in North America. In a traditional language classroom, you would spend most of your time in class listening to your teacher talk about Hebrew in English. Homework would consist of trying to memorize English glosses for Hebrew words. I'd add trying to memorize painfully English glosses for Hebrew words and translating Hebrew sentences into English. Now, the goal of any introductory Biblical Hebrew course is to help students learn to read and understand an ancient text. The traditional approach takes for granted that the easiest, quickest way to learn to read Hebrew is to focus on grammar and translation. There are no native Biblical Hebrew speakers. You don't need to know how to buy food in the market or how to hire a taxi in Biblical Hebrew. Why bother making the extra effort to speak Hebrew? Why emphasize hearing when all you really need to do is read letters on a page? Makes sense, right? But if your goal is to internalize the language so that you can read with understanding, and if you want long-term retention, not just passing a test, but being able to continue to read 10 years down the road, the traditional approach turns out to be neither efficient nor particularly effective. For one thing, I can say from experience that memorizing lists of vocabulary words is very time-consuming and doesn't work very well. More importantly, the preoccupation with translation, as if Hebrew must be turned into English to be understood, that actually gets in the way of internalizing the language. Hold on for a second. מה זה? זה גמל. 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 זה גמל. You don't need to translate gamal to understand what it means. Translation and understanding are two different things. Bypassing the translation is more efficient. It leads to quicker, more fluent reading and makes it possible to understand Hebrew as Hebrew. And once you have worked with Gamal multiple times in class, you won't need to sit down and memorize its English gloss. The goal of this course is to set you on a path toward a long-term, fluent reading knowledge of Hebrew. We are using a living language or communicative approach because it is a more efficient and a more effective way of achieving this goal. We will be memorizing things, mostly verses and stories, and that's because meaning sticks better in context. We will be learning actively because people learn languages better when their whole body is involved. We will be conducting class in Hebrew because it means more exposure to the language, and so more language learning in class. A living language approach is more efficient and more effective. It is also more accessible. There is grammar in the curriculum, and you will be introduced to the grammatical structure of the language. But you don't need to be a language guru to learn Hebrew. Anyone can learn. All you need is disciplined attention over time. Finally, you should know that I'm not developing this approach on my own from scratch. The Biblical Language Center curriculum that we are using this year is excellent. The principles that guide the curriculum are rooted in scholarship on how humans learn languages, and the curriculum has been classroom tested for several decades. It guides not only what you will be doing as homework, but also what we will do in class. I have spent much of my adult life convinced that a healthy church needs people who know the biblical languages, and that ordinary people can acquire and maintain a reading knowledge of Greek and Hebrew. Reading the Bible in Hebrew is rich and rewarding. There are all sorts of things in Hebrew that you miss in translation. The reason I'm teaching this course is because I am motivated to help you learn Hebrew as efficiently and as effectively as possible so that you can continue reading the Bible in Hebrew for the rest of your life. Welcome to the journey.